All right, hello and welcome to the September session of the Open Community of Practice in 2025. Um, uh, Whether you're here in person or watching the recording, it's so great to have you. Before we start, I just want to start with a land acknowledgement. So Athabasca University respectfully acknowledges that we live and work on the traditional lands of the Indigenous peoples of Canada. We honor the ancestry, heritage, and gifts of the Indigenous peoples and gives thanks to them. So as for myself, I live on the traditional territory of the Comox First Peoples and the Qualicum First Nation. So just to give you a little overview of what's happening today in this short session, we're doing introductions and sharing as we always do, just make sure we all know each other. We have the open bulletin, which I will share some news happening here related to anything open at AU. I'll do a session on exploring the public domain. So just like an info session, getting your feet wet in anything public domain. And then if we have time afterwards, I have some questions to have a open discussion on public domain. So let's jump into those introductions. So some of you may know me already. I'm Dan Cocraft. I'm the OER librarian here at AU. And I'm really interested in all kinds of things open, whether that be open access, open data sets, any kind of open adjacent thing that's got to do with licensing. Is there anyone else that would like to introduce themselves?
Sure, I can. So I'm a multimedia web specialist with the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I just started about 2 months ago in this role. And so I'm really interested in learning more about using public domain images and music, things like that, and videos and stuff that we would be using in FHSS.
Fantastic. That's great. And if you have any specific questions after the session, just feel free to reach out. Is there anyone else that would like to introduce themselves?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Yang, and I make a lot of open educational resources in STEM. So that includes calculus, which is what I'm working on right now. But I've also done biology and statistics and chemistry, and I also use a lot of open educational resources to build the OER that I make.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jonathan.
I'll introduce myself too, Dan. I'm Dr. Connie Blomgren, and I teach in the Masters of Education in Open Digital and Distance Education here at Athabasca, and I'm actually also the program director right now. And actually, currently, I'm teaching a course 622, which is called Openness in Education. So it teaches our grad students about the various aspects of open education. I have a nice project that I'm working on related to open networks. And I was just saying to Dan that I was at a conference last week, UNESCO Digital Learning Week, and they were talking about AI and education, but there was one session that was about AI and open education and its implications. So always lots of change happening in the field.
Oh, yes. And we appreciate you keeping us up to date too. So thanks for coming.
Hi, everyone. I'm McKinley Darlington. I'm the interim director at AU Press. We are Canada's first open access scholarly publishing house based here out of Athabasca University. So we do lots of open access publishing. We also have a newer program of support for open educational resources that Dan taps into, or that we tap into Dan for a lot of support. And I have a colleague at the press, Kyle, who is the primary coordinator for our work in that space. Unfortunately, he's not well today, so he's taking the day off, but I know he probably would have been here otherwise. So yeah, happy to see some familiar faces and some new faces in this space as well. So nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming, Kinley. Speaking of the press, we do have some news in the open bulletin about the Remix imprint. So something really exciting is that we now have print on demand. So for the OER titles published through the OER Publishing Support Program, or OPSP, there is now a link on the page to Lulu, which is a third-party printing service. So students or anyone else can pay the printing fee. There's no actual profit that goes to the press, and they'll receive the OER that we've published in a print format. So we're super excited about that. So thank you for working on that, McKinley, and thanks to Kyle for all his work on that. It's huge because I've been looking through some of the course evaluations from students over the period that we've had those OERs. And there's so many comments from folks asking for, like, I would love an alternate format. I would love to be able to print this off and access it that way. And now you can. So I'm going to drop the link to the Remix imprint in the chat. And you can browse those titles. You may notice there's also 2 more titles in the catalog there that will be coming out soonish. So keep your eyes on that. There's the link. All right, and the next thing to remind you of is that for that program, for the OER Publishing Support Program, we do accept applications every January. So that is coming up sooner than later. So keep it on your calendar. Think about it. If you have some materials that you are thinking of turning into OER, if you had an idea for some original OER, or just needs support and guidance, this might be a really good opportunity for you. So if you're interested in learning more or applying, please contact me and we can help you with that form from now and until that time. In other news, we have, now I have to remember what FMAC stands for. Is it financial and something accounting? FMAC 503 materials are now openly licensed. So Dr. Dave Anand had created those a long time ago and had put in a request to have an open license attached to those. And that has finally been granted. So we're super happy about that. Opening up those materials as Dr. Anand looks towards retirement. So very happy to hear that. And then the next thing is sharing opportunity. So if you have any open related news to share, now is the chance. So just raise your hand or jump right in. Go ahead, Connie.
I just wanted to bring everyone's attention to the Open Education Conference that's being held in Denver, Colorado. I think it's October 8th and 9th. They have online options as well. And I think it's $100 US to register for online. If you're a student, it's $25. And then that allows you obviously to attend any of the online sessions, but then also access to the recordings afterwards. So I'll put that link in the chat, but just drawing everyone's attention to that. And it's a great opportunity. And if you can attend in person, obviously, but the online option is also great too.
Yes, thanks, Connie. It's probably my favorite conference. I love going to it every year, and it's super affordable too. So if you have the chance, check it out. Anything else? 4 more seconds. All right.
I was just looking for a link because there's also the Canadian Conference on Open Science and Open Scholarship The
Yes.
first annual conference for that is coming up in October. I believe that and there's a limited number of participants to like go and attend the conference, but they are live streaming a lot of the sessions that is open to the public. So I'm still looking for a link for that. I can drop it in the chat once I find it. It looks really interesting.
And that was in Montreal, I believe, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have loved to go, but the schedule is just too tight with all the conference season coming up.
Exactly. Yeah, me too.
All right. I am going to quickly talk about the OER Publishing Support Program for folks who are not familiar with it. So it is an initiative that provides comprehensive support for the development of accessible, consistent, and high-quality openly licensed resources for AU courses. So these are housed in the Remix imprint over at AU Press. We use a platform called Manifold. It's super neat because you can reflow text, you can read it online, you can download it in like multiple formats. There's options for social annotation, highlighting with groups, and generating citations. So it's a really cool platform. And if you get the chance, check out some of our OER titles that are on there already and get a feel for what you like there. But anyways, this program does support all kinds of things related to your publishing project, whether that be project management, copy editing, typesetting, design, all those things that a press is really good at, including file conversion or creation, ISBN and DOI registration. And then part of that also is me taking those files and distributing them across the internet so folks everywhere can make use of them. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm going to jump right into our presentation here on public domain. I haven't had a chance to time it yet, so we might be close on time, but I will give it my best shot. I do speak fast, so maybe it'll be okay. So I called it Exploring the Public Domain. So the standard definition of public domain is a creative work to which no exclusive intellectual property rights apply. That's kind of a mouthful, and it's hard to parse what that might mean sometimes. So we can think of it as resources that don't belong to anyone. They are fair game and they can be used without restriction. Now, obviously, that is a very watered down definition, but in most cases, it is true. What can you do with public domain works? Well, you can use them in any way you want. You can modify them in any way you want, and you can share them. You don't need permission from the original creator, and you don't need to cite it. There are some cases where you may want to cite it, and we'll talk about that later. The public domain, really based on these original ideas about copyright, is a balance between private rights and public interest. So we want to make sure that creators are rewarded for their work, but we also want to make sure that there's contributions to culture and knowledge that aren't locked behind paywalls. So there's that balance, and we'll have discussions about how long that should be, how long should it take for something to enter the public domain. So I want to briefly talk about the historical context in Canada about public domain. We had our first Copyright Act in Canada in 1868. It was based on British law. I'm not going to go into too much details about that because it's kind of more complicated than we need to go into today. But the real history of the public domain, as we know it, started in 1921. So that was when we introduced our Copyright Act, and we brought our copyright in line with this Berne Convention in Europe. And so we had set the copyright term at life of the author plus 50 years. So let's say somebody writes a book, it gets super popular, they're making money off of it, then they pass away. After 50 years after they pass away, then a work would enter the public domain, meaning anyone could use it in any way without restriction. Now, That changed again in 2022 as part of a trade deal. I believe it was called CUSMA. I'm not sure what that stands for. We extended that copyright term to life of the author plus 70 years. So then we began to match the US and the European Union. 70 years is quite a long time. And then there's that weird period where things don't quite match up. So the way we got around with that is that in Canada, works by authors who died before 1972 are still public domain in Canada. I should have wrote there works by Canadian authors. Only authors who died in 1972 or later get this new 70-year protection. So if you have authors who published between, I think, 1954 and 1972, they are in the public domain. Or sorry, not in the public domain. They are protected by the old 50-year protection. After 1972, they have the new 70-year protection. In Canada, we have a 2-decade freeze, so we can catch up from the 50 years to the 70 years. So nothing created by Canadian authors is going to enter the public domain until 2043. So we have a while to wait. I've included some images here of famous Canadian works in the public domain. We have Anne of Green Gables, of course. We have a book called Sunshine Sketches of a Little Town. And I haven't read it, but I've heard good things about it. And of course, we have a painting by Emily Carr. So this is one reason why we might want to think about citing or attributing works in the public domain when it's not immediately clear who they're by, just for people's information's sake. Like, how do we find this? I wanted to add some information also about national rules. So it can get confusing, but if we follow these rules, we should be okay. So even if a work is in the public domain in another country, you have to follow your own country's copyright rules. So for example, I was looking up some public domain novels, and I found out that in Australia, there's a novel that I can't remember what the title was. It was in the public domain there. But of course, they have different public domain rules than we do. But I had to follow Canada's copyright rules. So that means 70 years after the author's death. So there's different countries with different rules. And so you kind of have to just follow what country you're in. Also, a work is only free to use without permission if it is in the public domain in the country where you are using it. So it's not so much about your nationality or the nationality of the author, but about the country that you're currently in. There are 3 different ways that works enter the public domain. So the most common way that I would say maybe 90% of all works enter the public domain is the expiration of copyright. So as you now know, that's 70 years after the creator's death, other than that period before, which was 50 years. But yeah, after the 20 years, it'll all be the same. There is also the CC0 dedication. So this is a license provided by Creative Commons, and it basically lets you release your work into the public domain. We can think of it as a no rights reserved approach, and people use it to maximize reuse. So let's say I create a drawing or some kind of schematic that I want everyone to be able to use without restriction, without citation, and I want it to spread as far as possible. I can make it CC0, essentially putting it into the public domain. There are also works that are ineligible for copyright. So we're talking about facts, ideas, and theories. Those aren't protected by copyright in the first place in Canada. According to the Copyright Act in Canada, for something to be copyrightable, it has to both be original and fixed. So it has to be in a fixed format. So I can't say I have this great idea about a novel and then copyright it. I actually have to write the novel, right? So it has to be original. It can't be Harry Potter. Also, there are things called works under the Crown copyright. So those enter the public domain automatically 50 years after publication. What is Crown copyright? Well, that's a certain type of copyright that protects literary, artistic, dramatic, and musical works, as well as sound recordings, performances by performers, communication signals that have been created under the direction and control of the Government of Canada. So essentially works that have been funded by the government and created for that purpose. And just interrupt me if there's anything that's not quite clear. So why does this matter? Why does it matter to us? Well, there's a lot of reasons why public domain material is amazing for creators or educators. The first is creativity. So obviously we can take things that have been made by others and adapt or remix or reinterpret and build upon art, literature, music, anything that's in the public domain. Building on that is innovation, of course. We can build new works without those legal barriers. It's great for education. Older books, images, and media are freely available for teaching and learning. Imagine trying to teach a art history class and not being able to show any art or having to pay for it. Access to knowledge is a huge thing too. So make sure that information is available to everyone, regardless of their level of wealth. And it also preserves our cultural heritage. So our shared collective history and creativity isn't locked behind some paywall somewhere. There are a few additional things to keep in mind when we're talking about public domain. One thing is these layers of content. So folks often ask me to find a book for them in the public domain, or they'll ask, like, is this public domain? And it's certainly possible that the original work might be in the public domain, but we'll often see people republish it under a new edition. So they'll add things like the history of the author or the history of the time. They'll have introductions. They'll have images, illustrations, all those things that are new under copyright protection. So that text is sort of reimagining it and is still under copyright protection, or at least those parts are. So oftentimes, yes, I can find you the public domain version, but it's not going to have all that extra information. Adaptations are also really good to consider. So when a work is translated into a new language, that's considered transformative and is copyrightable. It's also the case with musical performances, right? So we might get the sheet music under public domain, but a brand new recording of a Mozart symphony, for example, might be under copyright by whoever is performing it. Another interesting one is actually photographs of paintings. So the photograph itself is copyrightable, but not the original painting. So you have to get someone who's willing to take a picture of a painting and openly license it or put that picture in the public domain. Now, if you're looking for something that's in the public domain, or you found this great resource and it isn't in the public domain, there's still other things you can do. So you can perhaps find it in the library collection. You can make use of fair dealing. So you can ask copyright, what percentage is it okay of this title to use? Or you could even ask the copyright holder for permission, particularly if you can ask, if you have some inroads with the author that might let you use something for an educational purpose. Don't know if you can hear that, but I pulled that from Wikipedia. because it is in the public domain, as is the recording. There are quite a few examples of public domain music. We have the classics, you know, Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, Chopin, and Debussy, but obviously there's a lot more than this. But I just wanted to include some examples of cool music that is available for complete use without restriction. Oh, is he going to play every slide? Okay. So I also wanted to include some information about literature in the public domain. So we have some great examples here at AU that are being used in courses. We have Samuel Butler's The Whale of All Flesh is being used in English 395. And all three of these books are actually on Project Gutenberg. If you've heard about the public domain, I'm sure you've heard of Project Gutenberg. They had to do a great service to the world by digitizing old texts and literature that is in the public domain. Now, I like standard ebooks even better than Project Gutenberg. So they take those digitized texts and they put them in a really polished format. So similar to what AU Press does, these titles are reflowable, they're downloadable in different formats, they've got really cool covers, it really punches them up and makes them available to everyone. So highly recommend checking out standard ebooks. LibriVox is another great place if you just want to listen to an old novel or provide students with that option as an accessibility thing. LibriVox is great because they take these novels that are in the public domain and let volunteers narrate them. So for some titles, it is one person narrating the whole book, and for other ones, it's chapter by chapter, a different person. So very cool. Wikisource is another project that has been taking those public domain texts and digitizing them. From what I can tell, it's kind of in between standard ebooks and Project Gutenberg. They probably go into a little more niche titles, which is great, but it's not quite as polished as standard ebooks. There's a lot of films in the public domain too. So this clip here, for example, is in the public domain. I don't need to cite it in any way, which is super great for me. We have a bunch of older films like Metropolis, Nosferatu, The General, The Gold Rush, and Safety Last. If you're teaching film studies or anything like that, you could just share that freely with your students. I've watched all of them and they're all fantastic. So I highly recommend going online and searching for them. Internet Archive might be the place to find them. An interesting case is also Night of the Living Dead. Now, this isn't in the public domain in Canada, but it is in the United States. It was back in a period where they had to renew their copyright every number of years. And the whoever was in charge of the film didn't do that. They forgot and entered the public domain. So now people can watch Night of the Living Dead for free, which is also a great zombie movie. Recommend it. Public domain images, since art has such a long history, a great deal of paintings are in the public domain. A good rule of thumb is paintings created prior to 1954 are in the public domain. There's also some interesting rules about other symbols that can go into the public domain. So if something's very old and recognized by all, let's say like a cross or traditional symbol, maybe it's a traffic symbol or public signage, maybe washroom signs, that type of thing. You don't need to get permission to use those symbols because they're so ubiquitous that they've entered the public domain. You can also find public domain images in some designated clip art and stock photo collections. So you often hear things like Pixabay and Unsplash being recommended. Do check those out. They should let you filter by license to make sure that it's not just a Pixabay license, but an actual public domain license, or some other Creative Commons license. So check that out. I know that a lot of folks are saying that, oh, these kinds of websites will become obsolete in the age of AI, but we also have this question about licensing for works created by AI, which hasn't completely been solved yet. So it depends on which AI generator you're using. So now that you know about public domain resources, how do you find them? Well, I'm going to try and point you towards a few websites that I like to use, but there's so much out there that really you need to find what works for you. So I recommend finding databases that allow you to search by license. So that'll really help you filter out things that have custom licenses or different Creative Commons licenses, if you want that full ability to use. If you can't do that, try and find a year filter. So, find the year it was published. If it's old enough, be like, okay, I'll check the author's lifetime and see when they passed away, and check, what 70 years prior to that. Sorry, after that. If you're not sure, it gets a little confusing, just ask a librarian for help. We're here to help, and we can help you figure that out. So Wikimedia Commons is a super great resource to check out, particularly for images. So they'll be marked with public domain or CC0. Project Gutenberg I mentioned before. Internet Archive is a big one that's also seems consistently in legal battles, but if you want to find books, films, or audio or images, there's a lot in there that's tagged as public domain. So if you're looking for filler content, perfect place to look. There's also the International Music Score Library Project, or IMSLP. If you're looking for sheet music, then you can find it there. And it's just occurred to me that I wonder if Happy Birthday is in the public domain. I'm not sure if it is. There's some story about that. I will look that up. Every year, you can look forward to January 1st. There's new stuff coming to the public domain. I think it's 2027 we're getting James Bond, so I'm excited for that one. But next year, in 2026, we have Betty Boop. We have Pluto from Mickey Mouse, Nancy Drew, The Maltese Falcon, The Castle by Franz Kafka. We have that first English translation coming to public domain. And the film for the All Quiet on the Western Front. It's worth noting that things like Pluto, for example, or Mickey Mouse that recently entered the public domain, those original works enter the public domain. Not all works related to Mickey Mouse. So those are related to whoever created those and their death and the time passed after that. So keep that in mind. So I flew through there in great speed. So if you have any questions, now's a great time, and then we can have a little open discussion about these prompts I put together. All right, seeing none, let's. Oh, Connie, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, well, personally, it used to be 50 years, right? And
Yes.
then under the Trump administration, that was part of NAFTA, that now they changed over, I forget what they call it, but it was an easy kind of thing. Most people don't really care about copyright or the permissions, and so I think it was a sort of one that the Canadians could give up the Americans felt that they were getting something in that negotiation process, which is unfortunate, because 50 years is just a little bit nicer than 70, having to wait that much longer. But that's what our current status. So is it too long? Yes, considering that we used to have it as 50, I think. Yeah.
Do you
So
think 50 is too long as well? Or
I think it's
what's
quite
your ideal?
I think it's quite generous. I would say 25, a
Mhm.
generation, right? I think that's fair, perhaps to, the family or the estate or whatever, because there's also a point where there's some of these things, you can, like, there's a project that I was working on, and it's an artist and her works, etc. And the estate, her family are getting older, and the next generation probably doesn't really want to take care of all of the copyright issues kind of related to that original estate, because she's not Van Gogh or some big, really important artist. I mean, she's
Mhm.
important to an extent, but not that substantial. And so I think there's a point where it just becomes onerous, even on the family, to actually have that responsibility too. Yeah. So, I mean, it's complicated. And then, of course, with all the changes with AI, it's, there's all sorts of implications for copyright and understanding what is intellectual property and how that even works. I think this is one of the gifts of AI. People are actually talking about copyright and intellectual property that before people didn't talk about it. I mean, just, librarians and other people interested in open licenses, etc. Right? So I think, people are looking at it a little bit differently. And so 50 years, 70 years, we have 70. I don't want to see anything longer than 70. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, 70 years is a long time. I had a copyright course I was taking recently, and one of the points that was raised was a little bit morbid, but it's worth thinking about is um, do we need to ensure that there is a period in which that's long enough that someone can't realistically profit off of someone's death? Let's say someone has a really popular work when they're young. If they passed away, like right away, then there's still plenty of, uh, life left to profit off of that. So you don't want it like to be 5 years or 10 years. You want it a little bit longer. So I agree with you that 25 years is probably a really good time period.
I agree. I think 70 years is very long. It's one of those things when you sort of arbitrarily talk to me like, oh yeah, 50, 70 is only, 20-year difference. But when it actually comes down to actioning that, like that's a huge time frame to be running. And I mean, we just went through a round of royalty reporting through the press where we, forward along, usage reports to our authors and any royalties that they're receiving. And we have several authors now who have passed away, and so dealing with their estates and then the inheritance of things, like it is very complicated. So to think to have to kind of be doing that for multiple generations, it's yeah, we're barely getting through one generation, let alone thinking about doing that multiple times. So yeah, I think that yeah, shorter time frame, kind of well received within reason. I think it's also one of those things where we're creating rules based on exceptions or like exceptional circumstances, like if an author dies really young and there's the potential to continue to make profit. Like I don't think that needs to be the sort of standard. You can have exceptions. I think we need to build the rules for the the more common or general sort of experience. And but yeah, 50 is a lot. So yeah,
Yeah,
full support for shorter. Yeah.
definitely. And I think that the case that I was referring to was not just someone dying young, but being targeted for profit later. Obviously, you don't want to encourage that, but like you say, that the chances of that happening are so few and far between. I was just thinking about also like cultural stagnation. We want to be able to recycle and reuse ideas because, as we know, nothing is really original these days, or ever. To be able to remix and consume our own culture is, I think, really important. And we've seen. I'm thinking immediately of a terrible example of Winnie the Pooh entered the public domain a few years ago, and we had that big major film, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, like a horror ripoff of it, which is super interesting. Maybe not the best example, but it's good to see that can finally take those intellectual properties and make them into something new. And then my next question was about works generated by AI. Oh, Jonathan, did you want to jump in?
Oh, no, sorry, I kind of pressed by accident. I do have some questions, but it's not about your second question. So sorry,
No,
you can keep
please go
going.
ahead. Please
Oh,
go
okay,
ahead.
thank you. So thanks for the awesome presentation. You're just saying like remixing Winnie the Pooh and all that. So I wasn't sure if that goes into something like a parody, like which is allowed. And the whole world of memes, like the media is not necessarily in public domain, like lots of movies and whatever it's featured in memes, but so many people around the world use and modify these memes. And copyright is tough to enforce. Like you'd have to sue everyone in the world almost. So how does that apply?
I think there's also an exception for satire, which is where most people would probably say their use of a meme goes. Is there rampant copyright abuse online? Yes, very much so. Yeah, but I guess they kind of target
Okay.
the big money makers. Yeah.
Okay. And my next question is about CC0, whether it applies worldwide, because if I remember correctly, you're saying that the rules for public domain varies across different countries. So what might be legal in another country may not be legal here in Canada. So what about CC0? Is that everywhere in the world?
There is a global CC0 license, if I remember correctly, which is, I think, the standard. We'll have to double check on that, but if memory serves, yes, that is an advantage of a CC0 is that if it's stamped as CC0 in one country, it's CC0 in every country.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks a lot. Those are my questions.
Oh, you're most welcome. Great questions. Yeah, and then I was going to jump into the next question, which was should works generated by AI automatically be in the public domain? It's probably a little bit more complicated than on first glance because a lot of these AI systems are making use of copyrighted content to build new content. But then again, as humans, we're doing the same thing. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I really don't know. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that AI one. Yeah, that's an interesting one because obviously there again, that horse is so far out of the stable, it's just like gone, right? So even if you had a lot of copyright lawyers saying if AI is in contravention of copyright, what would they do about it? How would they even, right? Like, I think to enforce it, it becomes very challenging. And I think what happens is that I think this is what I mean. That's why I say AI is a gift in that way for us to think through what is intellectual property? Is it even, even that phrase intellectual property versus the commons and sharing and knowledge co-creation, how humans often take something and revise it or remix it, like you're talking about Winnie the Pooh, etc., right? So, and then, the legal aspects is that we're always trying to, nail things down, keep it within certain parameters. This is mine and I can profit from it only, etc. So there's a lot of contentions happening, I think. And so that idea of proprietary anything is really the basis of quite a bit of intellectual property law. And like if you go to the history, it's really not about about trying to share information. It's about trying to lock things down. So AI really challenges that. And
Definitely.
so should they be in the public domain? I mean, I don't know. And then I don't know if you saw the presentation by David Wiley where he was saying all OER will be generative OER, right, in the future.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and then if that's the case, then, and if everything is then going to have the public domain behind it, then that sort of throws into this question about copyright. How do we digitize something and ensure that the copyright is still with the author? Because as soon as you digitize something, the ability to, unlock it and share it, and therefore have it part of feeding a large language model is certainly more possible than if you just had paper copies of whatever it was, right? So that digitizing piece is part of what obviously feeds all into this possibility of public domain, AI, different things, assets.
Yeah.
So I don't have any answers, Stan. I'm just wondering. I have a lot of question marks there in my mind about it.
No, same. It's like we've opened Pandora's box. But like you say, at least we're having that discussion now. And it does seem to go back to that question of balance between private interests and what did I say? Public, private and public interests. Like, do we want to make sure we incentivize and reward creative works? People do put a lot of work into, let's say, creating books or art or educational materials. But on the other hand, we want to make sure that's open at some point for people to use unrestricted. So, yeah, I don't know about OER. It really opens up just more questions. And then given we have about 10 minutes left, I wanted to jump into one last question, and that is, how is public domain materials most useful to you? Are there ways you can see yourself using them in courses already have, or in your personal life? Oh, go ahead, Jonathan.
I can see it as an advantage and a disadvantage. So the advantage, when I make OER, I don't have to remake a picture or remake something or table. I can just plunk that into whatever I'm making, like on a press book. It's really convenient. The drawback is that if everyone is using the same picture, like the organelles of a cell, like inside of a cell, you have the mitochondria and the nucleus. If everyone uses the same Wikipedia picture, then it looks really cliche. And so I've seen that across several OERs that I've looked at, and it's a bit cringy. Maybe it's just me, but it seems a bit cheap. Like it's just something that was just copied and pasted from somewhere else. But I just want to say there's kind of advantages and disadvantages to using openly licensed work.
Totally. And I hope as we go forward in the future, we get more and more material in the the public domain. So you'll have more choices to find that particular diagram. But yeah, you're right. It's super great if you're creating a presentation like this. Just the ability to dump in a Van Gogh painting and not cite it is so great. And yes, I did check if this is in the public domain, this picture, and it is. So. Yes. Any other thoughts about how you like to use or do use works in the public domain?
Well, I think again, it sort of opens up this interesting conversation about how if something is old enough, then it belongs to everybody.
Mhm.
Which, is kind of an interesting idea. If it's old enough, then it belongs to everybody. And so then, sometimes I guess then it becomes this question of waiting. I mean, I think, yeah, there's definitely has to be the balance. I know that some artists, etc., will automatically put something directly into the public domain because they want it to be shared by everyone immediately. That they'll just jump over even the Creative Commons licenses and have it go into the public domain. So I guess a question that just occurred to me, Dan, is that, okay, so if, let's say you create something, you put a CC BY license on it, 70 years pass, will that item that was openly licensed then convert into the public domain?
It should, yeah, it should be both. So the public domain would override whatever copyright was previously the copyright terms that were previously set out by the creator. So just like a title from the 1920s or 1910s might have copyright on it. That copyright expired, right? So I think the same would happen with the Creative Commons license.
Right. Okay.
That's my guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Well, just before we go, I'm gonna do a little refresher here on some of our library resources. We did a survey last year, and we found out that not everyone is aware of all the resources the library provides related to OER or open. I'm going to list a few of them. We have the OER by discipline guide. So if you are looking for something for your course and you don't know what's out there, the OER by discipline guide is a great place to start. So I've organized it by the different faculty and courses offered at AU. So you can even search your course code and you can find suggestions for OER for there. It's been updated this year in June, so it should be all good to go with all the links working. The other places you might want to check out is the Open Education Guide. So that's over on LibGuides. I'll drop the link when I post the recording. But it is kind of like your hub. So it'll send you to other guides on OER, on open access, I think I have stuff on, open pedagogy, open data, and creating and using OER for students. So all kinds of stuff there. We also link to a copyright and licensing mini course. So right now it's just a fun, free way to go through and learn about copyright and open licensing. In the future, that's going to become a little bit more official and will be used in a more official capacity. So more to come on that. But I've redone it recently, so I'm excited to share more about that in the future. We also have the OER Community Corner. So if you're active on Engage and you just want to see what's happening, what are news, events, interesting articles, that's the place to go. Also, it's a great place to post. So I'm mostly the one who posts things, but it's an open space. So if anyone wants to share things, that's the place to share it. And that's it for library resources other than myself. So if you are having any questions, you can contact me by my name. You can contact me at dcocraft@thebascau.ca. You can also email oer@thebascau.ca. It's a little easier to remember, and it also goes to me, so I can answer your question either way. If you want information about the OER Publishing Support Program, again, you can contact me, or you can email oerpublishing@thebascau.ca. There's the link to the Remix imprint, and I'll include all these links in the summary once I email this out and post it on Engage. So thanks everyone for coming. Appreciate it, and we'll see you. I believe next one is December 10th. So before you know it, we'll be there. So take care.
Thanks, Dan.
Great.
everyone.
Thanks so much, Dan. It was great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Dan.
Bye-bye.